what are the initial tasks of this organization going to be? The initial, there's some tasks before we actually have created the organization, and the most important one is for council to approve the application and articles of incorporation. So back in 2009, we had this application to the province to create the corporation all ready to go, and we needed the approval of council by resolution in order to proceed, and we were unsuccessful in getting that. So that's one first very important step.
Why?
Why?
Were you unsuccessful?
Actually, I was just asked that question in the hallway, and I think there was a level of discomfort on the part of a couple of councillors in terms of what that financial liability was. And as I've explained in the previous slides, I don't think they understood that there were ways to limit that liability, that this wasn't actually committing a large amount of the municipality's revenue to something that was unclear what it was going to do. It was basically providing a very small amount of seed funding to get something going that was going to have to be self-sustaining by some of the models that we've included in the report. Subsequent to that, we did come back and meet with the councillors individually, and I think we got through some of that discomfort, but from that point on we were unable to get it back on the agenda to bring it back until now. So the next challenge will be to develop a work plan and budget, and that we're suggesting in our recommendations that work plan and budget be developed by the first expert founding board of directors of the new corporation, and then once that work plan and budget is approved, then it would be brought forward to council for approval. Once it's created, it would be brought forward to council for approval. Another task is to establish an affordable housing reserve fund. This is something that's been recommended from way back to 2007, and it needs to have a plan of how it's going to operate, how it's going to collect the money, how the money is going to be managed, and what it's going to be utilized for, and council would once again approve that plan. There needs to be a strategy for how we deal with the affordable housing on one of our community assets, which is our community surplus lands, and council would need to approve the direction on that. And it would, as I mentioned earlier, assume responsibility for the administration of covenants and the wait list relating to the affordable housing policy, which was created in 2008. And once again, council would approve the budget and plan for that. So the funding model, which I alluded to in my previous answer, is that we do require, the corporation would require some seed funding in the amount of $7,000 annually in the 5-year financial plan, subject to the approval of those work plans that were mentioned in the last slide. That would be at council's discretions. But this kind of initiative cannot go forward without some kind of seed funding to get it rolling initially. In some communities, that seed funding has come from that housing reserve fund, which has been in place before, but we don't have it here yet, so we're going to have to rely on seed funding from the municipality. Once projects are being planned, then I put a few pro formas into the report that just, and please, those are just examples of how it can work. Those are not pro formas necessarily for projects on Bowen Island, but it's a demonstration, and this is also in response to some of the concerns that came up last time we met with council. How does this work? How does the financial model work for these projects to support the housing corporation? And it's basically through a fee applied to the development cost. So the housing corporation becomes a development partner, and it charges a fee for its role in producing the project. And then we have the external sources, which would be the Housing Reserve Fund. And there are a number of questions to answer about how that fund would be created, and those would be developed through the expertise of the founding board of directors. Ultimately, I think the plan would be to, once funding is in place, to hire staff, and there would probably be, with that $7,000 a year until we get the first project in the pipeline, that would probably be some contract work or some part-time staff positions. So, next steps, create the corporation, select the founding directors, allocate the funding, and this last point is very important. We need to have the affordable housing initiative and the creation of the corporation and the, I guess, the support for the corporation from the community and from the municipality clearly stated in the strategic plan. So we know this isn't just the housing corporation's idea, this is the community delegating the responsibility and the challenge for producing affordable housing to the housing corporation.
So thank you, Tim. And so just to conclude, we're asking that council approve all 8 of our recommendations. In combination, they enable council's affordable housing working group to morph into a small, nimble, flexible, yet robust and fully accountable municipal organization dedicated to creating diverse and affordable housing units which are compatible with our community's vision and values. As Tim said, one of those recommendations is that council reinstate affordable housing in its strategic plan. To do that would, of course, strengthen the alignment of the strategic plan with the goals of the updated official community plan, where affordable housing now has considerably more prominence in statements of vision, goals, and policies. The Bowen Island Housing Corporation would then become council's strategic tool for taking action on that affordable housing priority. So in ending, I'd just like to emphasize that there is simply no notable downside to going ahead with the next steps that the Affordable Housing Group is recommending, and ultimately even with establishing the Bowen Island Housing Corporation. Council controls the level of financial exposure at all times and the scope of the work. There is an expectation of annual funding, but it's a relatively small amount in comparison to what the other strategies for affordable housing that council might consider, or to what the cost of staff support might be for some of those administrative and other associated responsibilities that Tim has referred to. At this time, the extent of municipal commitment requested is limited to the formation of the group of founding directors of the Bowen Island Housing Corporation to carry out a specific set of tasks. These directors will have to return to council for authorization at all key decision-making points, including the initial work plan that Tim has referred to, the pre-incorporation work plan that is, and budget, the application to the provincial registrar and the inspector of municipalities relating to the incorporation, and the articles of incorporation themselves. So these recommendations, although they take a whole page and there's 8 of them, they actually are still yet another small and very safe step towards where we're trying to get to. So that's the end of our presentation, and I just want council to know that we're ready to proceed at your command and happy to answer any questions you have.
I just want to make it clear that the founding board is the group that would do the next steps to get it incorporated. That's why, and they would be the ones with the skill set that's different from the committee. So 1 and 2 sort of are in tandem. You need to get the founding board selected before they're actually a board of anything, so they can create anything that they're going to be the board of. Okay.
Nicely put.
So baby steps.
Create something that they're going to be the board of.
Like incorporating the company.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're gonna incorporate.
That was
it.
difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, how do you actually work towards getting affordable housing? Aside from coming into subdivision plans or rezoning plans and saying there's gonna be a covenant on the land, you have to provide 5, 10 pieces of affordable housing. But how does that work in actual fact? I mean, is that the municipality saying, we want a piece of the property for our own purposes, or I mean, I'm not sure I understand how it works.
Good question, and it's often the question at this point. So the challenge is, even if the municipality provides land, and we have the perfect example here of the surplus lands and potentially, some part of the surplus lands being turned over to the housing corporation to develop, that still doesn't enable them to create affordable housing. There still needs to be the financial tool that actually, allows them to create it. If it's affordable home ownership, it could be argued that you could borrow the money based on the value of the land and produce it and then sell it at an affordable level. But that's very difficult, especially without the development partner and the expertise. So what we're suggesting here is, in order to be successful, we do need to have that developer on board, and we need the best way to do that, rather than having a site that's dedicated only to affordable housing, is to have a site that has potential for affordable housing as part of a larger development, as a percentage of it. And if the municipality can actually provide the land for that project at little or no cost, then there's a profit margin there that can be applied to create the affordable housing. If the municipality, in its wisdom, can grant a zoning lift to that property, which creates a profit opportunity for the developer, then some of that profit can be applied back to creating the affordable housing. So that's the way the mechanism works. The developer is providing, he's got the profit motive and he's got the expertise. The nonprofit, the housing corporation, provides the facilitation as to exactly what it is we need, what would work, and the municipality provides the lift in rezoning. And that's the equation that various municipalities have used in various ways to create affordable housing.
Have they tried to do something with rental housing? I mean, is that, or is that, our last 20 years or whatever, the federal governments have done away with the rental incentives to build rental housing. Is this a way of bringing?
They were really rental subsidies. There were also, way back, there were some incentives to create market rental.
Right.
The challenge right now is creating market rental still won't necessarily provide affordable rental housing. But to your question, providing affordable rental housing is actually one step tougher than what we're talking about here, because this is done basically on a cost recovery basis. We create the housing at a lower cost level, we're able to sell it at that lower price, and the money that we sell it for reimburses us, so it's cost neutral in the end, and then we go out and do it again. So we're able to produce a lot of housing without having to raise money to do it. On the rental side, you can't do that unless you have some equity in the project, because you're holding the equity and the rental is gradually paying that off. But you still need that equity to get started, and that has to come from somewhere. That came from the federal and provincial government, still comes to a certain extent for social housing. But it doesn't come to jurisdictions as small as Bowen Island. And it's getting increasingly hard to come by even in larger jurisdictions. So they're all having to look at different models, which is why this very model that we're talking about is being looked at in Vancouver right now.